Welcome everybody. It is Tuesday, which means it's time for Family Support Q&A, and I'm Sharon Spurlock with the St. Louis Arc. For those of you that know me, you know that I am beyond excited about today's guest. We have got two of the most interesting people to talk to today, and people that I really think are going to help me to think of new ways to be creative and helping people strengthen relationships, which you know is the St. Louis Arc's #1 signature strength, is being relationship focused. So today with us, we have Janice Fialka and Micah Fialka Feldman, and they are here to talk about how to build those relationships so that you can have the quality of life that you want. Yay! I'm so happy that you guys are here today. Let's start off with some quick introductions. Micah, would you be willing to go first and tell everybody who you are and a little bit about you?
Sure. I'm Micah. I am 36 and I currently live in Syracuse, New York. I am from Michigan, but I moved to Syracuse in 2012, and it's quite amazing that this next January will be 10 years that I've been in Syracuse. I can't believe that, but it'll be 10 years this January. But I currently teach and I do outreach for a college program, and I'm a supervisor to my staff, and I go around and speak at many conferences, and I wear I wear a lot of hats, and I do
especially the orange Syracuse hat.
Yes.
You had a little momming going on where mom wanted the bill to be a little different. Thank you, Micah. How about you, Janice?
Oh, yeah, great. Well, I'm Janice. I'm Micah's mom. I'm not 36 years old, but I used to be. We have two adult children, Micah, and then our daughter, Emma, who's 4 years younger and who has just recently been appointed to be a principal in Boston for an elementary school. So it's very exciting. I'm a social worker by background, an activist. I've been called an author as well. We have a couple books. The most recent one tells the story of Micah over the years, called What Matters. And I do a lot of workshops on the relationship, which I know is big to your group, relationship between families and professionals. So I'm looking forward. Sharon, thanks so much for this invitation. It's wonderful.
Gosh, I'm going to have you back to talk about that because that's really important as well. All relationships, I think, are important. And when you build relationships, that's how everybody moves forward. And I truly believe that. I got to see you guys talk when you were doing a screening of the movie Intelligent Lives, which Micah was in and a leading character in that movie. And I was really struck by some of the deliberate, intentional work you did around starting to connect Micah to people that were going to be a part of his decision-making circle. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that time long ago when Micah was, 9 or 10, and what motivated you to kind of start taking those steps?
Yeah, great. Well, Michael was the first student to be fully included in his school district. So it was all new to them, all new to us. And we had the very good fortune of meeting folks like Jack Pearpoint, Marcia Forrest, Judith Snow, part of the Inclusion Institute. And they really helped guided us about how do we do this thing that seems so new and unique, to include kids with disabilities, learning next to kids without disabilities. And so one of the things they talked about was the importance of intentionally, including and having conversations about differences. We noticed that the community was very friendly with Micah. His classmates, hey, Micah, how you doing? They weren't always friends.
Yeah.
And so, right?
Yeah. Like now, since the pandemic, but most weekends I would call people, but they wouldn't call me back. And now, I call people, they call me back, but sometimes it is hard. Being in a college town, I have realized that people graduate, then they leave, and then I'm still here, and it's it's nice being content, but I've learned as I work here longer, it's sad because they leave and then I'm still here, and then I have to find new people to meet.
Yeah, so in those early years, We brought the idea of Circle of Friends to the school district. We'd never done anything like that before. And so there was, the social worker was willing to try it out, and he presented one time in the class, I
Yeah.
think third grade.
Yeah, yeah, and at third grade, everyone raised their hand.
They all, yeah. So he talked about friends, and we gave him full permission to acknowledge that Micah was learning a little bit differently and sometimes needed support about how to hang out during recess, and what he can do on the weekend with his friends. So a number of kids said, sure, we'd like to be a part of this circle, especially because you got brownies and pizza and just had fun. So it wasn't a therapy group. It was really in some ways sort of like a student organization. And so they would plan different activities they do together as well, and I could talk a little bit about that as what we learned about it. I think one of the things that Mike and I always tell this one story is that basically it was a time to have fun together, but every once in a while it was also a time to have those difficult conversations. So the students noticed that Micah often had this tendency to poke at people, in part because at that point it's hard to imagine, but people couldn't always understand what you were saying, and so the kids would be irritated by it. And when people are irritated, they, especially at that age, they sort of just leave, right? So the good news was the kids had enough connection with each other that they said, we want to talk about it with the guidance of the social worker. And he did it in a very beautiful, loving, supportive way and talked about what can we do. And so one of the kids decided, well, we're going to use this gesture. And that meant, Michael, when you do that stop, and I'll talk to you in a few minutes. And so they tried it, and it worked some of the time. Sometimes it didn't. But here's the magic, is that the kids were learning that it's okay to talk about difficult things, and that they can be part of that. And then Micah, you also learned that the circle was a place you went to connect with people and to ask for advice. So
And I think those are relationship skills that everybody needs to build. So it's that wonderful interdependency, and it's a win-win for everybody. I'm in a women's chorus right now, and I noticed that when things are uncomfortable with people, a lot of times in the chorus, the first tendency people have is to just separate and not acknowledge it. And if you do that, you're losing the opportunity to figure out together how to move forward. And so I've taken some of the work I do here, and I can see the benefit in the broader, bigger world. Wouldn't it be a nicer world if we all acknowledged when somebody was struggling and figured out how to make it better? So I love that story.
Yeah.
You called that in an earlier interview, nudging people, that you kind of set up situations to nudge them into deeper relationships.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And, some of those young people now are also 36 years old, and they're teachers. And we just got a beautiful email from the mother of one of the students who was saying that he is now a teacher, and he was talking to a parent about, I was in a circle of friends when I was young, and now I want to do that for your son who has autism. So you just never know the ripple effect. You have to just keep on trying, even though at times the circle wasn't always, exactly what we'd hoped for. I remember sometimes the guys in middle school would come in, eat the pizza, say hi, Micah, and leave, but you just keep on, you got to believe in it. One quick thing. I think that one of the things that we learned is that having Micah's peers at his IEP meeting along with Micah, that shifted, and the kids always had such great ideas. For example, one of them said, 6th grade, you know what? You're letting the paraprofessional do too much of the work. Micah can do more, and we can help them, or we can help him. So there's so many ways to engage the youth community that we often go directly to the professional, who they're very important people, but the young people know so much. So that would be mine. Yeah.
That is just such a wonderful, wonderful thing to end on. I love that. I think that's something that we often struggle with is if we can get young families to start taking some of these steps, it does get harder when you get older. And so when I'm talking with families whose kids are 40 and 50 years old, they're starting from a really rough place. You can still do it, but it's hard. So young families, I hope you'll take that as a invitation to invite some kiddos to join your child for some ice cream, to come to their IEP, to think about what your summer is going to look like and do some planning together. So Micah, I know that you don't live in the same town your mom is. You said you've been in Syracuse almost 10 years. How,
It's like 9 years, but
right. So that must have been a really scary why did you decide to leave town when you had this great group of people that was helping you and that you were connected to and that you were helping?
yeah, no, yeah. I like I got I like got asked to speak at two big conferences at Syracuse University in 2011, and then I spent like a week and a half there, and then I thought of moving here because they like really got inclusion, and they really been doing inclusion for a long time, and I just thought it would be like a great place for me. I like never thought I would like live here this long, but 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 I just felt like very good and happy, and yeah.
So
Yeah,
when
that sounds like
Micah
it's been a
called,
great decision.
yeah, so excuse me, when Micah called from Syracuse, as he said he'd been there a whole week and getting to know the community, he said, you know, they get me here. He could feel that connection. And then when he,
And when I said that, and at a conference it's easy, and then as I lived here, like it hasn't been easy, but like but like at a conference, it's like you see everyone, and then as I live here, it's like no, I'm happy, but it's it's not like always like fun and easy and all that.
Yeah,
yes,
no, life isn't that way. I think if it
Like
was always fun and easy, you wouldn't appreciate the really good times quite as much.
well,
So,
yeah,
so Micah, what I want to
yeah.
know is, I'm sure it was really difficult for your mom and dad to imagine you moving to New York. What were some of the steps that you took so that you would have the people around you that you needed to make good decisions?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. What I did is first I wrote a letter to the dean, with my dad in Florida. I went to visit my grandma and told her, yeah, yeah, forgot how, but it took a long time, not a long time, but I forgot how, yeah, I like wrote a letter to the dean, and then he like talked to some faculty, and then we had some, but yeah, oh, we had Skype calls. I don't think people use Skype anymore, but maybe they do. And then I went to visit Syracuse, and I spoke in some classes, and and I found the agency that we like heard about, and I found, and it was quite amazing that I moved in 6 months. Like somehow with Medicaid, maybe back then it was easier to move. I like returned in August to Michigan, then I moved in January of 2012. It's just quite amazing that Medicaid was that quick and easy. But
Yeah, it certainly is. You can tell that you work professionally in the field because you know what a mess it can be to try and get Medicaid funding when you need it. So, Micah,
yes.
it sounds like you started off with some paid services that you knew that were going to help you to be able to navigate the job market, to navigate the living situation. What about the friendship part of it?
Yeah, yeah, what I did is I set up a circle, and then I found friends in like the graduate program that were there, and some of them I do keep in touch with, but I found friends that were graduate students, and then they helped me find other friends.
So you said you set up a circle. Did you just walk up to them and say, "Hi, I'm Micah. Do you want to be in my circle?" I mean, what does
Um,
that look like?
no, yeah, some of that, yeah, and most people, I'm a very like outgoing person. Like I'm not shy. I would go up to anyone. Like not like any like people. Yeah, yeah, I'm not a shy person, but yeah, yeah, I go and talk to them and say, I have a circle. I moved here. Do you want to join? And they say, yeah. Like most people come because they have pizza and they come for the food.
Honestly, isn't that the way we all bring people together when we hope we're going to maybe make a new friend or make more connections? We want to break bread together and have food. So, food is a very important consideration. So, I love that. So I imagine that you asked some people and they said thanks, but no thanks. And then other people came for the pizza, and other people stayed because why do you think people stayed?
No, good. Most people stayed. I didn't have any people that said no.
That's because you're so outgoing, I suspect, and so nice.
But
So,
I would say that now in my circle, there's new people. Like everyone hasn't stayed in the circle that were there when I first moved to
mhm.
Syracuse. But
And have new people
like I
come?
see them. What?
I was wondering if new people had come
Yeah.
since the beginning. Okay. So, what do you think makes a
Here-
good circle? I'm going to ask both of you that.
Um. I think a good circle means that people like that come that come and that come to the circle and know about how to help someone, and making sure that making sure the circle like knows how like how to have circle means. Like a while back I would have them on campus, and I was talking to my worker who I like and respect, and her and I were saying, well, I like having them, but it feels too rushed because we we like had them at 12 o'clock on Wednesdays, and then everyone had to go to their meetings or classes, and it just felt like, and during the meeting, some people paid attention, but some people had to like check their phones, and just it like it didn't feel like that calming and relaxing. It just felt just like a regular work meeting. But
And
Okay.
so
So
then
you
when
like to have some nice atmosphere as part of your gathering time with people. That's a good circle, and people that can contribute to helping you make decisions.
yeah,
and you then about a year or 2 years ago, you started to have the meetings not at the university,
no,
but where are they now?
like I like have them at my apartment, and they feel more relaxed because it's at home, and yeah.
And then when the pandemic hit,
Yeah, we like had him on Zoom.
and that's really changed because then some of the people who've been your friends for a while, who are in Reno, Nevada, and New York City, are able to Zoom in,
Yeah.
and that's really added
Mhm.
I don't know, a depth, or
Yeah.
the conversations are and planning are so rich because
Yeah.
of that. So Zoom is the pandemic. That's maybe one of the gifts that you've helped create, is by really involving Zoom. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah. It's funny. It feels like it would be so much less um, personal, but the advantage is this really broad net that you can get people that normally maybe wouldn't be able to be there.
Yeah, definitely.
Janice, what do you think makes for a good circle?
I think the diversity, people who have different kinds of interests. So, not everybody's going to participate in the same way. Someone might be the person who does yoga with Micah. Someone might be the person who's very outgoing and, is going to go to concerts or whatever you might do, or someone might do. Someone else might just be the person who checks in with a phone call. So I think that's really important. Not everybody has to be the same, and have the same kind of interests as well. In fact, Micah actually, to one of his planning meetings, and I guess Circle too, he's had someone from his not bank, credit union, who he got to know because he's friendly and you chat with folks. So I think diversity, I think well-run gatherings, I don't want to call them meetings. Rich and I rarely, my husband and I, Micah's dad, rarely come into the circles meetings. So I think having a facilitator is really important. Micah co-facilitates with someone, making sure that the gathering, moves along and is fun, but also, and you address some of the problems or concerns you might have. So those are, some of
You
my
have
feedbacks.
come in to meetings in the last couple of months.
Yeah, the last couple of months we have, but yeah, so it varies, but sometimes having parents there can be helpful, and sometimes, we just, you don't need us there,
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, sometimes things don't get said when mom and dad are there, and sometimes mom and dad want to take all the roles in the circle. So
Yeah.
I can see the advantage to maybe stepping back.
Sure.
I do want to clarify, because I don't know that we don't have a lot of circle of friends or circle of support stuff that's provided for our families here. So I'm wanting to know, like at what point does the circle actually have a meeting? And what's the difference between a circle and a meeting and a planning meeting? Because I'm sure when you started bringing those kids together for pizza, there wasn't a meeting. So is it ever just social, or is it always intentional with support discussions?
Yeah, no, yeah, it's a good question. Like each month we have a meeting, then this next month, hopefully nice weather stays. We're supposed to have a picnic outside, and then have people walk to my new house that I'm going to be moving there later on this summer. But like
The one where you're looking for a roommate?
sure, yeah.
Someone
In case anybody's in the Syracuse area and is looking for an amazing roommate, there's an opportunity. Okay, there, I did it.
Thank you. But I would say that I have like like some meetings are meetings, and then sometimes we have social gatherings, and then like I have my circle, and then with Medicaid I have like once in a while I have staff meetings, and quarterly every 2 to 3 months I have a meeting with my care manager and broker to talk about stuff. But that like, and sometimes I have brought other people, but I want people to know that I just don't have one circle. I have like other circles that I meet with other people to talk about how things are going with my staff and Medicaids, and like not Medicaid, like how things are going with my services and things like that.
Okay. So you've got a circle that talks about more formal support stuff that you need, but does the other circle just help you figure out how to save for a vacation? What are some of the, this might be personal, but what are some of the kinds of situations you bring to your circle to ask for advice?
Yeah. When I was starting to date in the movie A Return to Lives, when you watched it, I asked people about what are like good questions to ask, and like in the movie when I met with the person who I was dating, not anymore, but they asked, please stay away from politics and religion, and then in the movie when her dad asked who I voted for, I just said, well, I'll think about it. I didn't tell them, but it came from the circle, and one of my coworkers said, stay away from politics and religion. And I had like a conflict the last couple of months with a roommate that he was staff and he was a great staff. It just, he moved in with me because during the pandemic, my former roommate moved out and I was home for a couple of months and we were trying to find a roommate, and my broker had a great talk of him living with me and I was very happy because I thought we would have fun, and then he got other jobs and it, but I learned a lot I learned and I got stronger from it, but it was just hard living with someone that I thought was gonna be a great match, and he worked many hours and we didn't do that much. Yeah,
Mm.
And did the circle then, did you go to the circle to talk about that, to try to help?
Yeah.
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 So yeah.
but
I love hearing about that because I think one of the things that I worry about for the people I know with disabilities, particularly younger people, is that there's not very much opportunity from learning from mistakes. And I think there's so much to learn from having somebody move in that you think is going to be a great roommate, and then they wanted different things than you didn't get what you needed from it, and so how to extricate yourself from that, or
yeah,
what to do when you spend too much money on something and now you
Oh.
don't have the money you need for something. I mean, we've all made those mistakes, and sometimes I think people with disabilities don't get to make them. So
yeah,
I like hearing that.
I just, there's circles shouldn't be a program. One of my favorite expressions comes from someone else who said, they should be a party with a purpose, sometimes with a purpose as well. So, they will evolve. I mean, sometimes Micah you've had a couple people in the circle, and then it grows, and then it needs to be, let's come back and think about how we can energize the circle again. I think the big thing for parents is that, I've often said that there's two roles that parents have. One is a protector and the other is a guide, right? And we're really good in the beginning at learning to be protectors, fierce mama bears or papa bears, and it's important, but with time, we don't stop protecting, but we move more into a guide role. And so very quickly, I'll just share with you, and Mike has given me permission to share this, is that he was told by his dentist, who he saw every 6 months, that he had 6 cavities and 2 that had to be restored. And I, as a parent, I'm going, this is a little suspicious. So, if I would have just run in and said, hey, Micah, you need to get a second opinion. And, he's 34, he doesn't want to hear it from me. So I'm able to say, hey, that might be something you take back to your circle. And he did, right?
Yeah.
And got a wonderful dentist.
Yeah.
And how many cavities did you have?
Only one.
One. So,
and the thing is that sometimes I sometimes I go to appointments on my own because I just think that going to the dentist is not as I need a staff to go with me because they just clean my teeth and then I can share it with them, and then going to a primary is more like they have more things of the body.
Yeah, you mean you're more comfortable maybe taking a staff person to a medical doctor appointment. The dentist is pretty easy. Yeah.
I want to back up a little bit because you were talking about the parental role, and I think it's a lot easier to move towards being a coach when you've got other people that have your son or daughter's back. So we have a question in the Q&A about how to approach people at different life stages. Was it different for you to build Micah's circle in grade school versus high school versus him taking over in adult life? Do you have any tips about that, Janice, or stories?
Well, in the beginning, kids are pretty interested in, when the social worker asked who would like to be in Micah's circle, and, I mean, part of that meant that we also had to be okay about what we call breaking the silence. We had to be okay that people acknowledge that Micah had a disability. I mean, back then we probably said special needs. I've moved out of that. Now I use the word disability. So so it was much more of an invitation for kids to hang out together. And when when you move from elementary to middle school, we knew that kids were beginning to change in how they relate to the world and to each other. And so we actually had a meeting, invited parents whose kids were in the circle with Micah, just to have us meet each other, because, you know, families can be big influencers. And they were wonderful. I wish I would have done it earlier. You know, I just was a little bit shy. But they came out and they said, you know, we want this circle for our kids. It's not just about Micah. It's a transition. And so this group is going to go from elementary to middle school. And they came up with activities that they would do. Take them to the big.
Like my aunt, yeah, she's my aunt still. Like my aunt had a suite, and my aunt and my aunt and uncle, when I was very young, had a suite, and we like watched the game and had some
suite at the big basketball games, Pistons. And so because they wanted to have fun together and couldn't drive yet, you know, one of the other families said, I work at a nursing home, and the kids could come once a week or once a month maybe and play cards with them. So, you know, keep engaging, stepping into, as opposed to, neglect or hesitating. You know, that would be my advice. It's not always easy, but people want to be engaged. And then in high school, what we really learned is that what people were most interested is what's going to pull them in. So Micah got interested a bit in cross country. So
yeah, like I wasn't into. I think my mom and dad were more like wanting me to do it than me. Like I said, oh, okay, I'll try it, but like I wasn't that excited to do it.
No, initially you weren't at all.
I said, oh,
but you eventually got connected to the team, and by the third year, the teammates were picking him up, and taking him to practice and things like that.
But I would say I'm very glad I did it, because it helped me feel healthier, and it helped me get more healthier than
that was nudging, right?
Yeah.
We had to say, okay, just try it for a month. Here I am poking at him. Just try it for a month, and you know what?
It made me laugh when I heard you talk about him trying it for 4 weeks on a different video, because when I told you earlier, I was in a chorus. When people come to my chorus and they're kind of hesitant, I say, oh, just stay for 4 weeks. By then your nerves are going to be over. You're going to have a sense of what it's like, and you can decide then to leave, and I'll give you my blessing. But because I think all of us, there's so much anxiety, and you know, when you get into a space, you have to have time to sit back and observe before you even know whether it's going to be the right space for you. So I love hearing that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, that's, and I just share, I remember in middle school, and middle school boys sometimes have this reputation that they're not very empathetic. And I don't know if it's true or not, but that's what people say, right? So one of the kids, one of the boys in the circle said, I noticed that there's this young man a boy who's from, I think he was from China, and he did, or I don't remember where, but another country, and he didn't have a lot of friends. So the kids said, we should invite him into the circle. So they understood it as relationships. It's just great. It's so much more than just helping, one person. It's really about forming a connection, a community, So in high school, you invited some people on your cross-country team and some other people, and you would practice with the speech therapists what questions that you might ask them, so that, you would have conversations, right?
Yeah.
And the kids would say, this was the best part of the week, because we just didn't have any expectations. We just hung out and talked. So again, I don't want to paint that everything was perfect, but it was always evolving.
After high school and when I went to Oakland and other stuff, and when I moved here, I felt like, oh wow, they did hard work, and now they gave it to me, and it's harder now. I like
Welcome to the world of adulthood. I think every young person sometime between 25 and 35 has that moment where they think, wow, mom and dad did a lot of hard work and they were really smart. So you're absolutely right. When your parents stepped back and became more of your guides,
I said,
you
oh
took
no,
on more of the
I'm getting
responsibility,
into.
and some of it's hard. And I think that's one of those things we have to push too, that sometimes things are going to be hard. And just because you have a disability doesn't mean you're not going to do the hard stuff too.
No, yeah,
So
no.
everybody, if this is something you really want in your life, you have to make an effort to make that happen. And I really liked hearing you talk about pursuing interests, because I do think the older you get, the more you do try to seek out new relationships based on your common interests, whether that is the things you're passionate about as an advocate, or some hobby that you want to pursue, or whatever. I think all of us, it's very well documented that it's hard to make new friends as an adult, and so that's just a really common practice to seek out somebody that has those interests. I want to circle back, Janice, to the parent part, because you said something that made me think about some of our families, which is drawing the parents together to get their feedback, get their ideas. And we have had a couple of parent circles that I think have been very effective here, where they came together intentionally to make something happen for their kids. One was to create a social circle of friends, and the other one was to get through transition together. And I don't know if you can talk a little bit about the benefit of involving parents in that relationship building piece.
You're not alone. And I remember, for example, when Michael was getting ready to go to his prom, and I mean, he's very social now and has, is able to, seek out support and offer support as well. But I didn't want to be the person taking him to, the tuxedo shop and get a tuxedo. So because I had connections with other parents, and we had been, we'd had a couple meetings, if you want, or gatherings where parents came together just to brainstorm, I could reach out to one of them and said, maybe your son's going to get their tuxedo. And she said, oh yeah, that'd be great. I'll pick up Micah, and Micah will get their tuxedo together. And, are they lifelong friends where they meet every week? No, but there is a connection there, and was then. So, constantly, back to the breaking the silence, realizing that it's really important to reach out, to ask for support. Sometimes, people will say, no, I'm not that interested. But also, I mean, the parents came up with ideas that I never would have thought of. Our family isn't very much into sports, much to the chagrin of Mike and stuff. But so they knew about, the Pistons, and another parent was really into arts and crafts. And so the kids, when they were younger, they made teddy bears and took them to the hospital. Yeah, remember that? Long time ago, right? So, we don't do this thing alone. And there really isn't, we're creating connections and building on everybody's gifts, not just Micah's gifts as well. Yeah. So the more we can do that, everybody, got it. And in fact, it just, I could tell you all these stories of people coming back, like a speech there. One of the people was in Micah's circle when she was in 4th grade. I saw her years later, and she said, oh, I just want to tell you that I was in a class and they were talking about how inclusion doesn't work. And she said, no, I was in a class with Micah. I know it works, So we're learning and growing together. So I don't know, hopefully that answers some of the
well, it answers it, and it makes me think of so many more things, because I do think often families feel like somehow they're asking from a place of burden and weakness. And I think you said something about asking people with dignity, grace, and intention in something else I read or saw. And I wrote it down because I do think we have to change our mindset that you are reaching out for something that is a natural human need and it's beneficial for everybody. Can you maybe talk about that for just a moment? Then I have a
Sure,
question.
yeah, you do. Sharon, you're wonderful. You really dig deep. Yeah, the phrase that I use a lot is being able to learning how to ask for help, not with apology, but with dignity and respect as well. And that really a strength is to be able to reach out and ask or invite support. I mean, that's what builds community. And, you know, if you want to look at the scientific brain research, we know that when a person is being asked to help, their oxytocin actually increases. So the bonding hormone is activated as well. You know, so if you need the science, it's there, but if you need the, you know, that interconnection as well. So I think, and you know what, learning how to ask for help, not like scorekeepers, you know, that kind of thing. I think my mother really modeled that well for me. And now I watch Micah be able to do that with incredible grace, right? You're just able to say, you know, hey, I can't read this menu. Will you read it to me? There's no shame or guilt. That's what I observe in my son. So if I, you know, added a little bit to your life, Micah, in that way, I'm really happy.
Somebody in the chat asked if it's hard for you when people leave your circle.
With me, I'm very good at keeping in touch with people. Like, not too many people have left. Like, maybe have left, but I'm very good at keeping in touch with people and stuff.
But is there times though when you people sort of move on and you've gotten used to hanging out with them?
Yeah, like sometimes, yeah, but I can't. I can't remember.
You still make.
I'm going to ask you something. When you had your last Zoom circle meeting, how many people were there?
The last one this past month, I think it's like 10 or 12.
Okay. And when you do like a big planning meeting, is it about the same?
No, like if it's a big one in the fall of 2019, I had like 40 people.
Okay. And I think that's one of the things that for those of you that might not know Micah, that you need to know that it is hard anytime somebody leaves your circle, but if they're leaving a circle that's big and has a lot of different people to hold the boat in place, as they say, then it's not so hard. And it sounds like, Micah, you stay in touch with them personally. They're just not part of the decision-making part of things that are happening all the time. So that's a great.
I also want to, you said something, Micah, that I think is really important a while ago, is that, you know, you might have this group of people who are in the circle, but you're also reminding them that they could invite other people to come into the circle, and not everybody comes to every meeting, and that's okay, right? I mean, you know, they may just come to 3 meetings a year, but they're engaged. So, you know, I think having it be fluid is a really good path, good way to go.
Yeah, I think about the people that are in my life, and I do think of the circle analogy because I've got people that are there from the beginning to the end, but that's a pretty small group. But then there's other people that move back and forth, and they're all important, but you know, they're just different at different places. So for me, it feels very natural what you're talking about. And I like that a lot. So if I am a skittish, nervous person with a disability, or a skittish, nervous, protective mom, what would be like a simple thing that somebody could do to start moving towards building relationships?
What I suggest is that you find but think about 1 or 2 people. In this case, it would be, you know, mothers, or it could be a father or somebody in the neighborhood, and say, can I take you to coffee or tea or whatever we would do, Zoom now? And I just want to talk with you a little bit about how can I continue to support my son Micah to be involved in his community or his school. I'm not asking you to do anything. I just want to talk about what I need to know, or help me think about it. So it's not doing right away. So you're beginning to build a relationship and a connection. And out of that, things always come. I mean, 99% of the time, someone's going to say, well, you know what, my son could connect with your son in this way, or whatever it might be. So I think not necessarily, starting off, on May 13th, I'm going to do a circle. Just sort of taking baby steps. I do think eventually you could do it through, depending on the age. When Michael was younger, he wasn't going to initiate it. I would initiate it, my husband and I. And so it would be, a letter or a text, or, or a phone call. Hey, we're getting people together to talk a little bit more about how we can make sure Micah is connected to his community. Would you be willing to come by? We're going to serve, just simple desserts and ice cream, right? And, we just want to talk about it. So you just take little baby steps, and you don't ask people to commit for an entire year to be in a circle. So those are a few, beginning steps that I would offer. Yeah.
Have you found that there's one way that people prefer communication wise? Do you tend to email, text, Facebook group?
No, it's a great question. Like in my circle, I try to do like text or calls, and sometimes I do ask them if I'm ever sending too many, but sometimes like I've got better. I just check in with them before I ask them. But I sometimes text or call, but mostly I call because I like talking on the phone. That's how I. But with staff, I learned that in my notepad, me and one of my staff started a notepad thing. Then we put things down there. Then texting, if I think of something after she's done, it's too many texts, and then we forget what we're doing. And then but in a notepad, we can make a list, and then we can check things off. And
That's a great organizational tip. That can be really hard, I think. I want to just close with a quote that you made in another presentation, and it was that this was a movement of the heart. Mm-hmm. And I think that's that whole paradigm shift, the mind shift, that you're not doing this from a place of need and less than. You're doing this from a place of, we all need things, and this draws us together. So that is makes me so pleased to have had this time with you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart, Micah.
Thanks, Micah.
Thank you, Janice. Thanks, everybody.
All right,
Thanks.
thanks. Bye, everybody. Have a good evening. Thanks for joining us.